Student question.
Here we are.
Hey!
Hello.
Almost happy New Year time. Hey, everybody. Welcome to DEC Drummers Education Connection. I am here with two of my greatest friends in the world, two of the greatest guys, greatest drummers in the world. Jeremy Steinkoller up in the Bay.
What's up, everybody?
Way, and Bart Robley up in northern LA-ish. Ontario.
LA-ish, Ontario, Orange County-ish,
La La Land.
La La Land-ish.
All right. We're excited for this show because this is all about when everything goes wrong.
Oh, okay, there it is. There it is. That's what we're going to talk about. Perfect.
It's like how do you handle it? KIT. If you ever saw Bowfinger, see Eddie Murphy's character, he'd always say, "Keep it together, keep it together." KIT.
I always thought it was KASS. Keep it simple, stupid.
It's that too.
Yeah. That's how you keep it together. That's just by keeping it simple. So we were supposed to have David Garibaldi, the drumming legend, the icon from Tower of Power, on today, but
we were.
What's that?
We were
supposed to have him on. We were super excited, and I'm sure we will get him on. If not today, in a little bit, then at some point soon. But right now, he's not available to us. Hope everything's okay with David. And sorry to disappoint y'all, but we're here to provide some value to our community. So the show must go on.
That's it.
So we're gonna line. We're just gonna I guess that's what the show is about, is because there's a million times during gigs, during recording sessions, during drum lessons where things go haywire. So we're going to talk about when things go haywire and how you deal with them, and basically, faking it, because it happens. It's a big part of being in the music business.
Well, and sometimes, I the word faking it, it's like sometimes you just got to keep going, and, you're not sure what's happening. But sometimes that turns into something else that's completely different. That's even better, Yeah, I'm not talking about today's show. I'm just talking about in general in life.
You just end up doing something different. Than interviewing Dave Garibaldi today. It might be.
I mean, just even musically, I'm thinking about when I'm playing in a band and some groove isn't happening, and so we sort of switch gears and let's take it somewhere else. And that ended up being awesome, and that wasn't even what we were supposed to do, kind of thing.
Yes,
exactly. I think that sometimes when you're in a recording session, especially, I've run into times where you're in a recording session and it's an original session. A lot of times I say original, I pre-reference it with that, because a lot of times I do re-records, as we've discussed before. And in an original session, you kind of have this idea of the way that you think a song should go or a groove should go, like Jeremy said, and it's not happening, it's not working. And somebody gives you a little suggestion and you take that big left turn. Well, now musically, you've gone into a whole nother area. And that's where I think the creative juices kind of start to flow, and they kind of jump in, and your creativity comes in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Creativity. Yeah. That's right. Sometimes creativity is sort of bred when engendered when you have to do something different than what you thought you had to do.
Exactly.
Right? Speaking of which,
like rebooting my entire audio system, like we did this morning.
Hey, you know what? You want to talk about that and talk about things going wrong and shooting from the hip? I mean,
everyone always is, hey man, you should make videos. I've been hearing this for years. If you make videos, you're going to have an even huger music career.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that, and I'm like, well, I'm busy working, so there's only, teaching. I'm teaching over 30 hours a week. So I'm making money, man. I don't have time to try to make videos, and what's involved is just immense. To work in the lighting and the audio and the video, it's a lot of stuff. So I just recommend everybody just have a lot of patience, and that's what I've had to do. And I've kind of thought like every last little thing that should have worked with technology hasn't. It's like, what? That should work. I have a student, Rebecca Sykes. She comes in, she helps me all the time. It's like, why didn't that work? It should have worked. And it's just diligence. It's just sticking with it and working it out. And I think having a little backup plan. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to get this set up now where you have like cool audio and video where you could hear all the drums, you could hear all the electronic, I can hear everybody, and it's all tied in with Logic. And somehow it's probably a glitch in Logic that I haven't figured out exactly, but I know it's going to come together, and it's just being patient, being calm, not losing it. Is really the name of the game,
I have to
staying
say
relaxed.
that comes with age because
Yeah.
5 years ago, 4 years ago, if this would have happened, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm telling you the way I am, I would have lost it. I'd have been like, oh, but you just kind of roll with the punches, you just do. I watched it. And I
Yeah.
also think
Yeah.
one other thing that I think that is important is to remember that life in general is a work in progress.
Not me. I'm done.
Not yours. You're done.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no. I'm good. I'm good from here on out. Like
From
there's
here
no
on out,
Yeah.
this smooth
This
sailing.
goes.
All I need
This
is water
goes.
and bread. I'm good.
Yeah. Complete.
Complete. I watched so we were on a flight. The band was playing down in Florida a few months ago, and there was on Amazon Prime. We have Amazon Prime, and you can download free videos. And I watched this one called, and it had these big stars. It says Stallone, Frank, that is. And so I watched this documentary on Frank Stallone, and it was Sylvester Stallone's brother. And it's really fascinating watching this story. And the guy's had a pretty rough go of it, and he kind of obviously lives in the shadow of his brother. And he did everything right, but he just never ever cracked it out of the park. And the guy and the reason I was intrigued by it was because a number of years ago I was on a gig where his band, it was Frank Stallone's Latin All-Stars or whatever, was the headliner, and they were fantastic. And I met him for a second, and I was like, oh, so I was intrigued, and I watched this. Well, because of that, I watched this other show this weekend on Sylvester Stallone, and he's recutting Rocky IV. Rocky IV, if you're into the Rocky series, is where Apollo gets killed.
Drago.
Yeah. And he's recutting it, and he's re-editing it.
Cool.
He wants different things at different angles and how he's doing it. And his big thing was, and I won't spoil it for anybody if you're into Rocky and if you watch the making of it. He goes, hindsight being 2020, I would have never have killed off Apollo Creed because we could have done so many things with that. Maybe I would have done this or that, and maybe put him in a wheelchair, and how we could have played all these things into the Rocky series. And he comes out and he goes, but that's life. You kind of look back and you go, man, maybe I would have done this or I wouldn't have done that. And I think that, stuff like, Rick, that you went through this morning with the going through a DAW and trying to get that work, your heart's in the right place. You want the deck viewers to hear your drums sounding amazing. You want to be able to make videos that are going to sound amazing, and you keep swinging and ducking. So we have two different things here when it comes to the Stallone family, right? Frank and Sylvester. Sylvester Stallone, highly successful, but he's still taking his art that has been out for 30 years. And he's like, man, I could make this better. Even though I would have done it differently, I can't retell the story, but I'm making it better. And it was pretty fascinating to watch. And then you watch his brother, Frank Stallone, who is, he wrote the theme song for Staying Alive. That was his song.
Oh, that's big.
And and he was also in the Rocky movie. His band was the guys that were in the Rocky movie, standing around the fire pit, and Frank walks by and says, or Sylvester walks by and says, as Rocky, get a job, you bum. That's his brother. and they never neither one of them ever gave up on themselves, and they never quit trying to make things better. And I think that's also a metaphor for drummers. I mean, I practice all the time, but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to practice today. Always trying to make things better. So that's what we're doing here with this show. So even though David didn't come on today, hopefully everything's okay. Hopefully, it was just a simple thing where he's like, oh man, I forgot, I forgot to, that you guys were on, and he'll get on later. We're shooting from the hip a bit, but also I think it's educational, because that's life, and that's the music business. That's the entertainment business,
That's it.
Well, and on a granular level, I remember I had a gig one time, this is years ago, back when I made mistakes. And
what year did those quit?
Yeah, I think 1994, maybe.
94 is when you quit making mistakes.
I can't remember the last time I made a mistake. 97. I'll have to ask my wife. So I
made mistakes.
I had taken my bass drum pedal out of my trap case, my gigging trap case, to do some practicing on a practice pad thing, set, whatever, and had forgotten to put it back in my gigging trap case for the gig, right?
Oh no.
Yeah. I mean, and of course now I have like 5 bass drum pedals that'll never
Yeah,
happen.
right.
I keep one duct taped to the roof of my car, just in case. And so I show up at the gig, and I'm like, oh no, where's my bass? Actually, you know what? This happened twice. I'll tell you both stories. So the first time I show up at the gig, no bass drum pedal. It's a jazz trio, and I'm in North Beach, sort of in San Francisco, which is a place, there's a lot of clubs, a lot of jazz clubs. And so I'm thinking, oh, let me run around. I have a few minutes before we hit. Let me go to the other clubs and just see if any other drummer has a spare bass drum pedal, right? I mean, and how many drummers carry 2 bass drum pedals? None. So
right.
I struck out there. I come back, and I'm like, well, we're gonna play. I mean, we're here, we're set up, and all. It's just me with a drum kit without a bass drum pedal, and I had to play. That's what I did. We played 3 hours with no bass drum, and what I did was I used sometimes I would reach down with my stick and hit the bass drum with my stick.
Yeah.
To make a punctuation, or to give just a little bit of that bottom end taste. And it was kind of cool. I'd never done that before. Why would I have? And I ended up getting into some interesting things, and experimenting a little bit. And, it wasn't like, I'm not saying I would do it again by choice, but it was something that I hadn't done before. It was something interesting. And, it was me trying to be creative in the face of not being able to do it like I wanted to.
Yep.
So I had heard a story on, if you guys have ever checked out, I highly recommend the Drum History podcast.
Is that what it's called? Drum History?
It's called the Drum History podcast. Bart Zanderby is the host, and this is one of my favorite podcasts. And so there it is, Drum History podcast.
Cool.
So I've got to share this story and give them credit for bringing out the story. They were talking about, I forgot who was interviewed on that episode, but they were talking about Ringo, and they asked him what rock drummers influenced him in the early days. And he, of course, said none, because there were no rock drummers. There were no rock drummers. Yeah. Oh, it was on an episode on the New Orleans beat. Check out that episode. And but Ringo was heavily influenced by this New Orleans drummer,
Earl Palmer.
I don't know if it was Earl. I don't think it was Earl Palmer. But it was a guy who toured, and they were touring in England, and Ringo went to saw him, and the guy had no he was playing his bass drum like the double drumming kind of thing.
Oh yeah, interesting.
With stick on kick and snare, and Ringo said, I got the best drum lesson ever just watching that guy. Yeah,
really, no
with
kidding.
His hands.
So it's funny.
With his hands.
It's funny, Rick, that you tell that story, because I remember at that gig there was a guy who kind of looked like Ringo.
Hey, remember when Ringo called the show?
He kept looking at me. And it was as if he was studying what I was doing, and I was like, huh.
So you're saying that Ringo ripped you off?
Well, I'm not saying he ripped me off exactly. It's more like
He borrowed.
I just like to think of that. I kind of influenced. I influenced Ringo.
You influenced him. Okay. Okay. Here's one. Here's
we need
one
to call
for.
him. We need to call him and get him on this episode.
Yeah,
We
right
do.
now.
Yeah. Call
debunk
him up.
that. Yeah.
Call Greg
Call him
Bissett.
up.
He's got his phone number.
Dude, can you imagine if we got Ringo on? Okay. So anyway, so here's one for when things go wrong. Okay.
All right.
Here's one. Okay. So I've been really fortunate to be touring with Sam Morrison Band for 23 years. God, crazy. Anyway, we're playing a New Year's Eve gig in Oklahoma, and we flew into Texas, and a lot of times, we've talked about backline kits before. Backline kits is where you show up and there's a drum set and you play it. And I always take a handful of goodies with me to put onto the kit in case something goes wrong. And you ever get that weird feeling when somebody tells you something and you're thinking, this just doesn't sound right. This guy goes, man, backline guy goes, dude, I got you a Sonar drum set. And something in the back of my head said it's probably one of those Sonar Force kits that is an entry-level kit. And I thought to myself, that's okay, that's fine. I'll play whatever's there. I don't care. I'll play. But I knew it wasn't going to be because we're literally in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, in a casino. And so I'm thinking, okay, if it's a top end Sonar kit, great. I'm still kind of expecting at least to be on a stage and be in a showroom of some sorts. We get to the gig and the stage is literally set up in the middle of the casino. I mean, like, I'm playing the drums and like there's a slot machine right here. I can reach out and pull the handle. It's right there. So ding, 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 ding is going off while we're playing. And I was right. The Sonar drum set consisted of a Sonar Force drum set that was probably made 20 years ago, that probably had the head from the factory on it, a bass drum pedal, a Sonar Force snare drum with, again, the head that came from the factory. It's beat to death. A hi-hat stand with a set of Sabian B8 hi-hats. Thank God they were Sabian B8s, because for those entry-level cymbals, the Sabian B8s sound good, man. They do. Yeah. There's other brand names out there that have entry-level cymbals where I'm glad they were the B8s because they sounded great. A hi-hat, a hi-hat, and a B8 20-inch ride. That was my kit for the gig, and I'm playing a rock gig. Now, I was like, okay, here we go. And it did have a bass drum pedal, so I didn't have to play the bass drum with my stick. But you pulled it off. And talk about shooting from the hip. And I just thought to myself, at first I was like, wow, it sucks being in the middle of the casino with no stage. But then now you got a funny story to tell. And how am I going to pull off a rock gig with big tom fills and no tom-toms and no crash cymbals? Well, you know what? Tonight's going to be a practice in practicing, and everything that I would normally play, I just did on the snare drum. I tried to get tricky a couple times and turn the snares off and turn them back on, and it worked sometimes it didn't. The band didn't fall apart. We glued it together. We got through the gig, right? It happened. And that's really a good example of shooting from the hip and never knowing what you're going to find in the music business. And honestly, the guy, man, his heart was in the right place. Somebody told him Sonars are the best drums in the world, and he got me a Sonar bass drum and a Sonar snare drum. He was happy as heck. He thought I was going to be happy. I didn't spoil his day. I was like, hey, man, great. Thank you so much. You get out there, you do the gig,
Man, yeah. I had a tricky one. Oh, go ahead, Jeremy.
Sorry, Rick. It forces you to play the drums differently, and that's when interesting things can happen, right? So
that's right.
Like you, I had a similar experience. Well, not so similar, but I had similar in some ways. I first tune of the gig, snare head ripped right through it with my stick, and I'm not a hard hitter, so I don't ever break heads. It's the one time in my life, one out of two or three times I've ever broken a head, and of course, this was still before 1997 when I was making mistakes. So,
man, that had to be a tough time for you.
It was, things really cleared up, I will say, after 1997. Anyway, I didn't have a backup snare head. and then a backup snare drum. So, and you know, it's just a brewery gig. It was just not a big deal, but like it was a big deal to me that I couldn't hit my snare drum anymore because that was it. All I was going to get out of it. So what did I have to do? I had to play the rest of the gig with no snare, using the toms as, you know, hitting the backbeat on the tom. Right. And that's cool for a little while, but, you know, kind of gets old after a while, but whatever, you know, I had to improvise, and, you know, no one said anything. No one was disappointed. You know, it was more me tripping on it, whatever. But, you got to go with what you got, and you got to make the best of it. And
you know, you could cross stick the tom, you know, you could, you know, and give it a little clicky sound.
Rim shots on the tom. Yeah.
You could stick pop it a little bit. You could sing it. Boom,
well, that's the point. That's my point, is like you had to do things that you didn't normally do. I had to do things I didn't normally do, and play the drum set in a way that I wasn't used to playing it. And that was a moment of creativity, you know, or a couple hours of creativity that I wouldn't have otherwise had. I got a story to tell, and maybe here's the best part: it made me think differently about playing the drum set a little bit. Right. It made me think about, that's kind of a cool thing. I wouldn't do that for a whole gig, but maybe I do that for a tune or two, because that's got an interesting sound and it's different. So I incorporated it into my vocabulary, and it's this new way of playing the drum set that I had never done before. I remember seeing Al Foster. I don't know if you guys know Al Foster. Great jazz drummer. Played with Miles Davis, and you know, I saw him hold his stick up sideways, holding it in the middle, you know, and he would hit two toms at the same time.
I've seen that, dude. I've seen that. Yeah.
Wow, that's cool.
He would do this thing, wiggle back and forth, and sometimes you do just simultaneous, you know, hitting both at the same time. And I was like, I remember watching him do that. And I was like, you can't do that. Hey, Mr. Foster, you can't do that.
Yeah, you know? Mr. Foster, don't do that. Just did it. I'm Jeremy Steinkel. I don't make mistakes. You make you're making a mistake right now. Don't do that.
All right, man.
Okay, Rick, go. You got one. I got one too. Go.
Oh man, now that we're starting this, there's so many to share.
Right?
Okay. So in the early days of my 80s band with my brother Robert, we had our band Be Wild. You'll see his license plate holder or license plate up there on the wall. We were in the studio. I was like 18, and we're in the studio. We've got a big production deal, and we're going into New York City, and we're not having to foot the bill. And we're in like these really fine studios in New York. And they're like, okay, time to cut the drums. Okay, play the bass drum. I'm like, play the bass drum. Okay. And they're like, no, we're going to record the bass drum. Then we're going to record the snare drum.
Oh, no.
Then we're going to record
I've heard of that before. Wait,
was it somebody with like a tape recorder and a handheld microphone? This was like really, really nice studios in New York that we recorded the demo in, you know, and I'm like they're like, look, we just want to add gated reverb, and we don't want the mics to bleed, you know, we want that big sound, you know, that Phil Collins 80s sound. And man, oh man, you know, I had two choices: figure out how to do it, or be another one of those guys who sits back while they hire a studio musician.
There you go. Did you do it?
I did it.
There you go.
And I like the outcome of 3 of the 4 of the tracks.
Yeah.
There you go.
So,
hey, that's awesome.
Challenging.
The mix was sick. Challenging, but check this out. This is one of the best reasons I could ever come up with for learning to read music. I charted out the tracks, and I knew what each instrument was, and I had a click, and I'm like, this is the snare part. Boom, boom. This is the kick part. This is the hi-hat part. If I couldn't write that, I don't think it would have happened. I don't even think it would have.
Yeah, but what a difficult thing to be able to basically deconstruct all your parts and play only one layer of them throughout the tune.
Why did he do that? Why did the producer do that?
Well, he told you because he wanted all the reverb and the gate and all that stuff, which I don't know why he couldn't have added that post. But
they wanted no mic. They wanted no mic bleed, and that was just like the big thing that was happened a lot in the 80s.
Yeah,
some of the Michael Jackson stuff is recorded that way. I know Zorro had to record some stuff that way.
Oh, interesting. But I mean, think about, like, let's say you're laying down a groove and it's got, you know, a backbeat and a bunch of ghost notes on the snare, right? you know, it's one thing to play that, you know, to play it, and then it's another thing to like, okay, just play the left hand part by itself. All of a sudden, it's like, of course, you know, it's in the wiring, so it's like you can play the part, but it doesn't
translate.
Hard to make it feel and flow without the hands doing their thing together, because they've learned it together. They're reliant on each other to play this part the way you want to deliver it, and to have to do one piece at a time, man, that'd be really challenging.
Yeah, my hat's off to you. When
it was scary.
I didn't when you said that he didn't want any mic bleed, I heard that, but it didn't. I was like, it didn't sink in. I was like, and now I've heard of that before. I've never had to do that. I had to recut cymbals one time and just sit there and, you know, and just do the cymbal thing. So here's one. I got one for you for of like switching on the fly and being prepared. Okay, maybe not like the backline thing, but a little bit. A number of years ago, we got to play on that. I don't know if you guys have seen it on. I don't know what channel it's on, called World's Greatest Tribute Bands. Have you guys seen that show? Dude, it was a big deal for a while, and it was on Access TV. That's what it was, Access TV. It was hosted by some famous actress chick, and they had all these tribute bands come on and play, and you'd go up and do your set. It was shown live on Access TV, and the viewership was crazy. It was like 50 million people. It was nuts how many people watched the show. And it was at the Whiskey. Places packed, all these, you know, we brought in a lot of people, but there's actors and actresses and famous people there. And we're doing load in and setup. And the drum riser, have you guys ever played the Whiskey?
No.
The stage is in the corner. Ricky, ever played there?
No, I've played a lot of the other clubs, but
okay. The stage is in the corner if you've never been there, and the drum riser is kind of back up against the corner. It's real tight. And I'm setting my drums up, and I thought to myself, I'm not going to set up my side snare tonight because it's really only there for looks. I don't play it. And I wasn't going to do it. And then I thought to myself, well, this is stupid. I just thought to myself, it's there for looks, and I'm going to be on TV playing in front of a bazillion people. Put it up there. You're on TV. So I put it up. And dude, I had brand new heads on the kit, the whole shebang. I'm playing along, and we're right in the middle of the fourth song, and I felt the top layer go, and I thought, that's weird, you know? I don't break a lot of heads, and it was a brand new Aquarian head. And okay, well, if the bottom layer holds on, I'll make it to commercial, because we have one commercial break during the show, and I'll switch the snares out. Dude, literally, that went through my mind, hit through the drum. I was like, oh. So thankfully, I looked up. I was like, well, I got overhead mics, and I went over to the side snare and just started playing, and it got picked up. We went to commercial break. I changed it out. So there's one for, you know, you break a snare drum head. Luckily for me, I set up the side snare. We made it through the song. We're golden. We're good to go. So be prepared and be ready to switch on the fly.
Yeah, that after 1997, I was always prepared.
You were always prepared. In 97, yeah, right.
So I'll tell you guys, I got one for you guys. So, okay. And I actually tell this story in my book under the chapter called Lemonade, which is all about making something good out of something sour, right? I had a wedding gig in Carmel Valley. And for you guys that aren't familiar, Carmel Valley in California, very posh. Oh, thanks, Rick. You know, beautiful. It's near Monterey. It's very rich, affluent community. A lot of wineries and stuff. And we got hired to play a gig. It's about 2.5 hour drive from here, from where I live, and for the band, who's all based up here in Oakland and San Francisco. And we get down there, and you know, it was a wedding gig. Wedding gigs usually pay pretty well. You know, I was representing the band. It was my band, so I was, you know, dealing with the client. And we're all set up. We're ready to go. And you know, they have their speeches, you know, the toasts, you know, after the ceremony, and the toasts go on. And we were supposed to play from like, I think 8 to 10:30, and the toasts start, you know, at like 7:30, and they go and they go and they go, and it's like coming on 9 o'clock and it keeps going. And like they decide to sort of open this up for anyone who wants to say anything. And I kid you not.
Man.
And then dinner served. And so they didn't want us to play during dinner because we were a dance band, right?
Yeah.
By the time the toasts were done and the dinner was done, it was 10:30. And we hadn't played a note. Now, some people are like, oh, the contract says 10:30. So, that's it. You got to pay us more if you want to pay us. I wasn't going to do that kind of thing. I was like, hey, this is their wedding. I don't want to ruin their event. We were prepared to play, but we start playing at 10:25. We played the first dance and like a couple of songs. And then the manager of the venue comes down and says, hey, you guys have to stop. There's a city ordinance that we're not allowed to have amplified music past 10:30. So here we are. We've played 5 minutes. And they paid us whatever, a couple $1,000s or more to play for their wedding, and they're just heartbroken. And I'm like, it's out of my hands. There's nothing we can do because it's a city ordinance thing with no amplification. And we've got keyboards, guitar, bass, drums, vocals. And I had this thought, and I said, well, what if we played but unamplified? I said, oh well, yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
So, keyboards, no. Out of the picture. You can't hear the keyboard no matter what you do if it's not amplified. Guitar, electric guitar, unamplified. I mean, you can hear it. Everyone's really quiet. Exactly. Electric
Here
bass.
comes the solo.
Yeah. Actually,
Wow.
electric bass, electric guitar, and amplified, vocals, and drums. And we did it. So we're like, all right, so we're gonna
Really?
Oh.
So I played no sticks, right? I played with my hands. I played with my fingers. And like I took my wedding ring off to get a little metallic sound on the hi-hat, so it would kind of cut through a little bit, right? And we played, and with like and everyone was quiet because there's no other that could hear the music otherwise. And the keyboard player played a tambourine, with her fingers, and the vocalist, she sounded great because everybody could hear her. And we played for like an hour, and they loved it. They were so happy, right? And it was actually one of the most fun wedding gigs I've ever played, because everyone had such a fantastic attitude about it. It was fun. It was quirky. It was like something we'd never done before. It was the quietest I've ever played in my life. Right. I had to play the bass drum, with the beater just like a half inch away from the bass drum, just like barely touching it. And it was a cool challenge, right? To have to play that quietly with no sticks. And man, it was a great night.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. That's so cool, man.
All right. I got one.
Story. Let's hear it.
I love that. And you wrote that. I remember that chapter. It was very well written in here.
Thanks, Rick.
Yep. Very inspiring. All right. So you guys know I've done a lot of freelance work in the style of psychobilly, which no one knows what that is. It's rockabilly.
I know.
You're
the man at that stuff. Yeah. And I have to say, I'm gonna interrupt you. I'm gonna say this, dude. Your clinic at Deck Day was amazing.
Yeah.
And you are so incredible at that style of music, Rick. You're phenomenal. Man. Thank you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Yeah.
I love that,
Absolutely
Bart. I've always loved that style because it crosses over so many things. It's rooted in rockabilly. It's got upright bass, so it's super percussive. It's real upbeat, so it's got that fast punky vibe, but then you can swing with it. And then, our band had a little country vibe at times. So lots of train beats. It was just this style that is just so creative. But I tell you what, when you're at a grocery store and someone says, are you a musician? Because they recognize your shirt and they want to know what band you played in. I'm like, dude, I don't even want to tell you because I know you've never heard of it. So they're always like, oh, I haven't heard of that band. Oh, I haven't heard of that band. But anyway, within that style, people who know the style love it, and the scene is strong. And a really interesting thing about that scene too, and this is something that I think could be helpful for people, and students especially, is you see a look and a vibe of the people. They all look one way, their haircuts are extreme, their tattoos are extreme, their clothes are extreme.
Mm-hmm.
But I found that they're all inclusive. They don't care that you're, if you look kind of straight edge. Like I never got any, I was always like the only guy without a tattoo, the only guy without that haircut around, and everybody was just cool, and so I found that's kind of cool in the metal scene too, you know, hanging out with
Mm.
Gene in the metal scene. People
Right.
aren't, you know, like not everybody has to look and act that image to be in the scene. So, you know, broaden your horizons. Don't be afraid to go out to a gig if it's not your genre. You know, most people are really accepting of who you are and what your vibe is. So,
I think people, I agree, Rick. I think most people are. And I think sometimes the people that are the most unaccepting are the ones that are, supposed to, that will preach that they are accepting. You know what I mean?
yeah, it's
know,
true. Yeah, yeah.
and yeah,
So
that's
anyway,
cool.
I played with I played with the band Clax, Klax, out of Austin, Texas. Subbing for this great drummer named John. John, I forgot your last name. I'm sorry. And I had one rehearsal to do the gig, and the gig was in Brazil of all places. So
Wow.
I was like, wow, I'm finally get a chance to go down to South America and play. That was really, really exciting. So we're on the plane flight, and Whiplash is playing in the movie. And I'm like, I only had one rehearsal, so I'm watching, not my tempo, and I'm watching the violin teacher. I'm like, this is not a good vibe before I'm sitting in a big festival. So I stopped watching the movie. I'm like, I'll pick this movie up later. I didn't want to get vibed out by that
That's
movie
funny.
and be conscious. So I had little notes on my chart. I had my set list, and I had the main beat or the tempo written down, or some accents, just some regular notes. Okay. Just and a couple songs I had like arrangement charts, and I had them placed in different spots so no one, the audience couldn't see it. And so we start doing the gig, and they were strobe like crazy at this venue.
Oh,
The entire time it was blink, 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 blink.
Oh my
It was,
God.
so bad. I mean, they didn't give up. They didn't give up. And you couldn't see a chart. There's no way you could see anything. It was just crazy. And we just had to wing it. I mean, it started making me dizzy. There was a period where I was just closing my eyes,
dude, I
just,
can't
and
stand strobe lights. I can't stand them, man.
so rough.
Yeah.
And what I think, and it went fine. And I think really, because I think when you write out charts or write out music, you're sort of committing it to memory just by the act of writing it out.
Well,
And so we pulled it off, and there it is. Sometimes these challenging stories are just the best, because they're the ones that you remember and you take with you, and you can share like this when your guest doesn't show.
right. And
You guys, I just heard from David Garibaldi,
and
he apologizes. We had a miscommunication about the day, so sorry about that, everybody. But we are going to reschedule with him and have him back on. So we'll let you know when that's going to happen.
okay, cool. Well, that's
excellent.
Good. I'm glad everything's okay with them. So
yeah, that's
hey, well,
good
this
news.
the third time will be the charm, right? When he gets on, so
Exactly.
that'll be cool. So I'm sorry everybody that's watching. We have a few people on YouTube that are looking at it right now, and on Facebook as well. And so for those people who were expecting Garibaldi, he will be on, and we do apologize for that. Rick, I like your story about the strobe light, because it reminded me of a story one time, charting and reading, and what you said, like when you chart something out and you're just not playing along, you're listening and transcribing, you are committing it to memory. And also I found, I'm sure you guys will agree with this, you're okay, right here I'm going to put a 16th note. You can almost feel in yourself playing the 16th note, you know what I mean? You can, so that stuff happens. I was playing a gig one time where there was two gigs back to back. One night was I forget where the first gig was. It was a place up in Hollywood, off of Hollywood and Vine. It was right across from right by Capitol Records, some club up there. And then the very next night was at the House of Blues in Hollywood before they tore it down. And first night went great. I read charts and got through the gig, and I knew the songs okay by the second time because I'd played them the night before. And I got to the second gig, and I put my charts up, and I always, for those of you out there who haven't done a lot of reading, if you have a set list, the order of the charts or the order of the songs, you put your charts up in order. So you take the first one down, second, you're in order. Well, the venue, the House of Blues in Hollywood, the drum riser at that place was like playing on a trampoline, and you had to play a backline kit. So you're playing a drum sets, but as soon as I start playing, and dude, I started playing and my charts went everywhere. First song, like, oh man. So I'm playing, I'm just, don't panic. Okay, and then, dude, okay, you guys had to have been here. It was an original gig, and I just remembered this. The music goes everywhere. Well, I've never played these songs before. I'd never heard these songs before. These are original songs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm sitting there going, what's the name of the song?
Well,
so I had to look over the set. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I'm looking. Okay, there's a set list. Okay, that's this song. And so now I'm trying to find the chart, put it back. Oh, it's a nightmare. But those things happen. And again, I think it's just makes for a good story, and it makes for you do look back on it, and you got the good story. But hey, man, you also got that one thing that's what the Drummer's Education Connection is all about. You got a nugget of learning from that. You got a nugget of education from that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Because of that gig and one other gig, I'll tell you that story really quick. I always have these guys right here on my music stands, right? I always have them right there on my music stand.
What is that?
It's just a binder clip.
Oh, clip.
Yep.
And I have the big ones, small ones, and exactly. Right. And you just, and the other story was, and I should have been on top of this as a teacher. I had a student call me one day and he goes, "Hey man, I'm playing at a talent show and I want to play this piece of music. It's a snare drum duet." And he goes, "But I'm really having a hard time playing it without the second part. You and I always played it with the second part. Can you come do it with me?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." I didn't have anything going on. So I go up to the student school and I grabbed a snare drum and a snare drum stand and a stick bag. And I didn't think ahead. He had the music there, and I get to where the talent show is at, and it was outside. And we put the music up on the stand and we're playing, and it's outside, and I didn't have any clips with me, and I didn't think to tell him, and the gust of wind comes up and poof, the music blows away. And it happened. Luckily, the kid was a great player, and we had played the piece of music a million times, and I could feel him tense up, and we're playing. It's like, just relax, the piece. And we made it through, and we made it through the piece great, and it was fantastic. So yeah, see, there again, there's that little, it's the story, it's the nugget of information, because now in my stick bag, right where your drum key goes, I've got a couple of those little, clips. Binder clips just in there, because you never know what you're going to need them for.
That's I right on, Bart. And we've all had these kinds of things happen, right? And this is part of how I've put together my little emergency kit, in terms of both what's in my stick bag and then what's in the backup kit for things that go wrong.
Yeah.
And every single thing that's in there is something that I wish I had on one gig that I didn't have.
Yes.
Binder clips, clothespins, fuses, plug adapters, sticks, kick patches, and on, right? And really, the best thing you can do is go find a drummer who's been playing for a long, long time and look what's in their stick bag, and then just get a bunch, aside from the sticks and the brushes, and then get all that stuff.
And talk to Jeremy, because he quit making mistakes years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Hey Bart, tell us about your buggy gig.
Buggy gig?
Yeah, you had flies or something. You were playing outdoors. And
dude, the buggy gig. I thought you said yeah. I'm thinking like on the back of a buggy. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is absolutely my wife calls this the Bart factor, and we used to call it with my dad the Boyd factor. You know, we caught a fish this big, but it was this big.
Yeah.
Everything I'm about to tell you did happen, and this is not exaggerated. We're playing in Arizona, and I cannot remember the name of the venue. It was an outdoor venue, and it was in a housing community, right? It was a gated community, and the stage was backed up to this lake, and they had this beautiful, these houses were mansions, and so they hired entertainment to come in, and it was outstanding. The stage is backed up to a lake, and we are getting ready to play. We're standing behind the stage, and the guy comes up to announce us, and he says, "Hey, I hope you made friends with the person sitting next to you, because maybe they brought some bug spray, because we're going to have some bugs tonight, and hope you enjoy the show." And we're like, well, why didn't they tell us this? We get to playing, and we start, and I'm like, man, he's right. There are bugs and gnats and flies everywhere. Well, what happened is the lake behind us, it was on a golf course. So this is in the monsoon season, so it wasn't raining, but there were bugs and praying mantises and flies and gnats and mosquitoes. And we're playing, and I'm noticing the guys are kind of doing this, and I'm kind of having to, do this too. And all of a sudden, the guys turn around and they look at the drums, and they just give me one of these. They're like, oh my God. I'm like, what? And I turned around. Well, they turned the stage lights on, and it was like the book of Revelation. There was bugs, biblical size coming at me. I'm like, oh my God. So I literally, by the end of the set, nobody left. Everybody stayed. We didn't lose a single person. They're dancing and swatting flies away. I was making a game out of it. I'm literally just killing bugs on my drums. I can hit that one. I can hit that one. And it was a nightmare to play. There was literally praying mantises eat bugs, and there was praying mantises climbing on my drums. I snorted a bug. I literally had a bug go up my nose. And trust me when I tell you, when you snort a bug and it hits your eye socket at like Mach 2, it hurts so bad.
Wow.
I almost I dropped a beat. I did, and the guys looked at me, and the sound guy goes, "What happened?" I'm like, "Dude, I snorted a bug." and so to this day, the guy's name that runs sound on that gig, his name is Steve, and the company that books those gigs for us is Tad Entertainment. They are the promoter out of the Phoenix area, but they get us all over Arizona, Texas. They put us everywhere. And so whenever Steve runs sounds for us, the name of the show, he bugged it Bug Palooza. Yeah. And there were bugs everywhere. Yeah, that was a nightmare gig. That was a nightmare. Roachella. Yeah. I love it, man. That was awesome. That was awesome. So anyway, yeah, that's my bug story.
I just had an epiphany.
What's your epiphany, my friend?
The epiphany is sometimes you just got to step away from a situation, and that's tricky, and just collect yourself and breathe, and then you'll have the solution. Yep. My technology problem this morning. I have my headset mic on, right? So you guys hear my headset mic, but you kept hearing an echo. Well, I have a live mic in the room for all the cymbals. That's probably creating the echo, the double mic.
That's probably what it was. Yeah.
You just need to step away and correct yourself.
What's that?
You just need to step away and sort of let the answer come to you.
Yeah, exactly. It just came to me. So we'll regroup, and then a lot of times I think when there's problems, we feel that it's a 10. You know, that it's real challenging, but it's really a point. Yeah. It's really a 0.5. We just put so much energy into that 0.5 that we lose it, and then everything becomes even worse.
It's so
Thank
true,
you
Rich.
for saying that. That was
then the
very
stress.
Well said.
I
needed to hear that.
There's the thing that happens, and then there's how you respond to it.
Right.
And it's very easy to get confused and conflate those two things as being the same.
Right.
Say that again. Please say that again.
There's the thing that happens, and then there's how you respond to it.
Right.
And it's easy to conflate those two things together and make them feel like they're the same thing. but okay, this happened.
Right.
How did I react to it? Did I get stressed out and then that blew up? And usually when you get stressed out, it adds to the whatever, the crappiness of the experience or the stress of it, right?
Yeah.
It makes things worse than they needed to be if you had come at it with a different attitude. It's hard, very, very hard in the moment when you're triggered by the thing to not react. It's so hard.
Yep. My wife calls it, when we get in that zone, she calls it lizard brain, because there's so much adrenaline pumping, and really it messes up your clarity.
Right.
It's why arguments are a bad idea.
Yeah.
Nobody
they
is
don't usually
clear
produce
during an argument.
Yeah, right.
There's no
there's
point
not
in
usually
having
a
an
winner.
argument.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that, and I think all of us too, as teachers, we all want to jump in and help. And I'm like, well, Rick, maybe if you try this, Rick, maybe if you try that. And it's and you did the right thing, said, hey, you know what? We'll deal with this later. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's my wife has a picture in our guest bathroom, and it's a little plaque, and it's a cartoon character, and there's a signpost, and it has two signs on it with arrows pointing the opposite direction, kind of like that thing in MASH, where it said Tokyo and all that. And one of the signs says reactive, and the other one said, pointing the other direction, says proactive. And that's what I kind of think that's what we did today in every way, shape, and form, because we really wanted, this was Garibaldi's show, and we promoted it, and we ended up shooting from the hip. And I'll be honest with you, I enjoyed the heck out of myself today, and I think we had some really good nuggets of information here.
Sure. Well, and we're going to have Garibaldi back on, we promise. So
there we go.
You guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for bearing with us. Thanks for supporting us. We're here for you. Happy New Year to everybody. Happy holidays.
Happy New Year.
And
Happy New Year, everyone.
Thanks, you guys. We'll see you next week. Bart, who's up next week?
Who is okay, I'm 99.9% sure I will follow up with him as soon as we get off. Stevie D. He played with David Gilmour, David Crosby.
Big time.
He is a great guy, dear friend, amazing drummer, amazing singer. This guy sings backups with David Crosby. If you can sing with David Crosby, man, that's saying so.
Wow.
Yeah, man, he's great player, and just a sweetheart of a guy, man. So I'll text him as soon as we're done here, but pretty sure it's going to be Stevie D. He already committed to it.
All right, thanks. We'll look forward to that next week.
That's super cool.
See you guys. Have a great New Year's.
Thanks
Great
for
New
watching,
Year's, guys.
everybody.
Be safe.
Happy New Year's.
We'll see you next year.
Take care, Chip Ritter. We missed you today.
We missed you, Chip Ahoy.
See you next week, Chip.